You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 177 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Today, we are heading to Hampshire to meet sheep farmer, contractor, and consultant James Edwards from JJ Livestock Solutions. Now, I say Hampshire, but James also has land and sheep in various locations, currently including West Berkshire, Lincolnshire, and Wales. But he is on the road a lot, as we will see today, and is always looking for new land, and sometimes his land changes, as you will see today as well. He spends a lot of time on the roads. All his sheep are run on temporary grazing licenses and various grasslets, arable, cover crop ground, on anything between, he told me before, anything between about 1,000 acres and 4,000 acres, depending on what's available in any given year. He also owns 4 acres in Wales, which is where his farming journey began. James grew up in Wales. He went to uni in Edinburgh, and he even ran a record label for a bit. Honestly, this guy's done a lot, which this could be quite a long episode. Just saying. Recently, he won the Gold Award for the new entrant category at the British Farming Awards. James, welcome to Meet the Farmers. Thank you for coming on. Hello. Can we start with British Farming Awards? Take me back to that night. What was it like for you?
Yeah, that was bizarre. It's quite a strange experience. So I've never been nominated for anything, let alone won anything in my life. And so
it was amazing. 100% now.
It was amazing to get nominated. Like, that was really, really cool. And excited to go along to the night, and didn't think in a million years that we'd ever win it. So went along, and of course the category for new entrant, I think it's one of the last categories called.
Yeah.
So
there are a lot of categories.
There were a lot of categories, which unfortunately means I drank a lot of gin and tonics. So I was sat in the back. We were like the back corner. I was there with a friend of mine who agreed to come and chaperone me. A girl called Nina, who was brilliant, sort of came and looked after me. And so we went there, sat down, lovely, chatting to people, having a drink, having some food, blah, 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 went through. And then it eventually gets to the final category, or I think it was the final last but one category, which is New Entrant Award. And it's sort of, New Entrant Award, James Edwards, JJ Livestock Solutions. And my friend just looked at me and just started laughing. And I was like,
better go up now.
Absolute panic. Like, there was no, I didn't. So I sort of stumbled up, smiled really broadly, gripped the thing, shook someone's hand, and then sort of fell off the stage, which was great. But then they immediately whisked me away to an interview, which I think they never showed for obvious reasons. And they pulled me into a little room and sort of asked some very serious questions, like, so what what inspired you to get into sheep farming? And I think my answer was, I really like dogs. And sheep.
And sheep. I really like sheep.
And it was just like, so it was an awesome night, but it was a complete surprise.
What was the judging process like? Did you sort of know about anything before?
So the judging process was brilliant. So obviously, someone nominated me, and then we had to send a load of stuff in. So we had to send financials, so financial report, records for the last few years, and all sorts of stuff like that in. And then we had, so this is my second ever Zoom call, because the first one was the judging panel,
right?
And I had just as much difficulty trying to get them to be able to hear me or see me.
I should just say, listeners, we've spent probably about half an hour just on various mobiles, laptops.
We've got there. We
did.
So it's brilliant. So there was sort of, I think 4 different people, including the winner from last year, Tom, and then a truly amazing guy who was the guy from the Henry Plum Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Whose name escapes me. Awesome people, and they just asked loads of questions, and then we laughed a lot. And at the end of the kind of the interview, I thought, well, at least they thought I was funny.
Exactly. That's a good thing for life, generally, I think.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I thought I saw the other people kind of nominated, and there were some really good people. And I just thought, like, cool to be nominated, but we won't win. And then I had no idea whatsoever until on the night that happened, and then was like a bit shell shocked. It was like I was really pleased, and I was kind of obviously really proud to win, but also my long suffering parents, who over the last sort of decade and a bit of me sheep farming, I don't think initially my mother thought this was the wisest of career choices. She probably thought I should have been a lawyer or something kind of.
Well, judging by your background, I mean, you really could have gone in many different directions. Which we'll go in. I was going to talk about your sort of early life first of all, but actually, I think it's probably a good idea for the listeners. I mean, a lot of people listening, I think, will probably know you through Instagram, but if anyone who doesn't know, just give us an idea of your business and sort of what you do day to day at the moment.
I am effectively almost first generation sheep farmer. And we run a maternal flock of, it was about 1,200 ewes. We've just sold a couple of hundred. So we're down to about 1,000 breeding ewes, which are mostly ex-Lana ewes. So a kind of wool shedding maternal composite. And then we also run about 150 chamois ewes, which are a terminal sire, and we sell a load of breeding stock, so females out of the ex-Lanas, and we sell rams out of the chamois, and we sort of graze, temporary grazing all over the place. A lot of it would be arable stuff, so temporary grass breaks, cover crops, sort of regenerative stuff. And we've been it's very, very kind of like popular to use the term regenerative agriculture at the moment, but through our kind of links and background with Kingsclere Estates, that was like I've had a lot to do with the whole kind of regenerative stuff. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff, and we sell fat lambs to ABP, and we supply a butcher, and I also do a load of contracting for different people.
So I should laugh. It's just insane how busy you are.
So I do a lot of contracting for like different people, and that involves like sort of day stuff. So we do a lot of tailing in the spring and the summer, and then also through to like more regular things. So as I was saying before about the Kaiapoi Romney guys, so I'm down there every couple of weeks really. And then I also, when we always have a lot more winter keep usually. This year is a bit different. We usually have a lot more winter keep than we do summer keep. So I buy store lambs and also take in tack sheep to sort of fill that keep. And because why would you want to have a quieter winter?
Oh, of course.
And then I do a bit of consultancy. Although at the moment, most of that consultancy seems to involve drinking cups of tea and telling people how they can make more money from their sheep, without me actually managing to get as far as charging them. So that's something that I need to work on a bit more. Like I do a bit of charge stuff, but a lot of it, unfortunately, I'm too nice. So people ring me and then it's like 2 hours on the phone, and then but that's something that I kind of like looking to develop a bit more. Just anything really involving sheep,
all things sheep. I think that's a good way of summarizing what you do. Okay, let's go back to some early life stuff. So you grew up in Wales, and was a bit of a liking for the outdoors, and I think your dad had some sheep as well. So tell me about your life growing up and sort of how that love for the outdoors sort of came about.
So that's why I said almost first generation. So when I was a kid, I grew up in the middle of sort of not nowhere, but fairly rural Monmouthshire. So around sort of Abergavenny, Raglan, Monmouth kind of area. So it's very much like sheep farming territory. It's all sort of family farms, 100 to 200, 300 acre, not big farms. There's no estates. There is no arable. It's just sheep and beef really. And it's lovely, lovely place to grow up. And I was always just like mad keen on anything outdoors. So I grew up sort of hunting, shooting, fishing. Dad had spaniels, like Springer Spaniels, used to train and trial Springer Spaniels. So I spent a lot of time on shoots and round and just in the countryside. Loved it. Dad was the same, and when I was little, he decided to get a few sheep, various like bits of rented grazing around. So I think he had about 100, 120 ewes, just Welsh ewes that he then put to a blue-faced Leicester, and had some Welsh mules, and he had a little flock of Rouge, which are like again another French terminal sire, Rouge de l'Ouest. which are a pink-faced, chunky kind of, which is actually quite similar to the chamois that I keep now. So there's kind of a trend. Yeah. So anyway, so Dad did that, and I just sort of like, it was just a hobby for him really, and but it gave me a grounding in like going to market, lambing, that kind of stuff, and I just love being outside, and I always wanted to be outside, wanted to work with animals, and was obsessed with dogs. So when I was a little kid, a Welsh sheep farm on the Welsh hills seemed like an awesome thing to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a sheep farm on the Welsh hills.
Say, how you become one of those is that's the challenge.
Little bit difficult. So my parents, being very practical, were like, well, that's unlikely to happen, so you should probably do something else. Yeah. So then I looked around, and the next coolest thing that I saw were auctioneers, because they basically got walk on boards, lots of shouting, everyone looking at them, not a clue what they were saying, but it seemed fun. So I was like, I'd like to be an auctioneer, and then didn't do that either.
No.
And then was like, I'd like to be a vet, and then I went and did work experience when I was like 16,
right,
at the vet. Oh yeah, by this time, so the sheep had gone, so foot and mouth came around. Obviously, we were in a cull area, so the sheep went. So Dad didn't have any sheep anymore, but it had already kind of sparked an interest, and I had friends, growing up where I was, going to school where I was, friends who farmed and stuff. So I spent a lot of time on farms. So yeah, I thought I'd be a vet, went and did work experience, realised that I did not like the people. I did not want to deal with Mrs. Jones' sick hamster. So, and I was too short-sighted to think, well, you can go through this and become a large animal vet. So yeah, that went by the wayside. So I kind of just put all that on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah, and then you somehow ended up at Edinburgh University doing an MA in social anthropology.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So I was quite good in school, despite being distracted most of the time. And a lot of that is credit to my mother, who was a primary school teacher, who is one of the nicest women on earth, but I also grew up living slightly in fear of disappointing her. So like, because she was a teacher, and my parents are kind of academics. So mum's a primary school teacher, dad was a lecturer. So it's just kind of, it was sort of assumed that, you go to university, you get a degree. So I applied for a uni in London, Edinburgh, one in Ireland, Cardiff. You can see, really imaginative. I just picked like various compass points in big cities.
I did a very similar thing, actually.
Well, I'd never been to Scotland before, but it seemed really cool. It is amazing. So I went to Edinburgh University, and I actually went to Edinburgh University to do ancient history.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I really liked history. Yeah. I just like but I like the history, the swords and sandals bit. You know what I mean? The cool bits. Yeah. The kind of like, if I could have been a Viking warrior,
then you would have been.
But unfortunately, that was about as likely as a sheep farm at the time. So went to university to do ancient history, and in Scotland you do like outside courses. So you do like related courses in your first year, and one of the courses I did was social anthropology. And in the social anthropology thing, in my first year, we did loads of stuff on like the Kalahari Bushmen, the pygmies in the Ituri forest in like the Congo and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I want to learn about
Take me to these places.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go traveling. And before uni, I'd done a fair bit of traveling. So my parents are pretty relaxed about stuff like that. And my grandfather went to India when he was like 15 before the war, and spent his life in India in the Second World War, and so had his father and my great aunt. And there's a big kind of family connection with going to the other side of the world and fighting wars. So, but I grew up living with my grandfather. So the whole thing about traveling, I'd always been, I grew up on stories of India and places like that and things. Yeah. So I'd always wanted to travel. So I'd gone off around Europe on my Todd, and seen lots of Europe, just backpacking around. Came back, and this all sort of tied in with the anthropology thing. Went to Edinburgh, discovered anthropology, thought that was awesome, and also had dinner with somebody once who told me that J.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, he lectured in anthropology.
Oh, right.
I was like, it might not even be true, but that's what they told me. And that was like, well, if it's good enough for Tolkien, it's good enough for me. So I changed to anthropology. Okay. And I did that, and that was awesome. And we did loads of, loads of really interesting stuff, and that was great. And so, did a degree and a master's in social anthropology. Had an amazing time living in Scotland. Went out a lot, partied a lot. ended up putting on basically one night, went out and was like, there are no good night outs here. There were lots of good night outs, but
So
not
you
good.
made one.
So I made one. Yeah, my mate went, we'll put your money where your mouth is. And so we stayed up until like 9 o'clock in the morning when the clubs opened, like for business. And we rang and found a club that we're convinced to let us put a club night on.
Awesome.
And then we're like, So then rang around our friends who could DJ and we're like, anyone any good? And so started doing that. And then before we knew it, we were like having people come over from the States, from around Europe and stuff like that. It was really cool. And
Awesome.
ended up running like a monthly club night and then another one, and then did a load of stuff during the Edinburgh Festival and blah, blah, blah. So that was really cool. And then that led to like briefly running a record label, which seemed like a good idea. But I'm a bit of a technological Luddite, so that was really hard work. We pressed some vinyls, we set them out all over the place, people bought them, it was great. And then eventually my time at Edinburgh ended.
Yeah, and then it's like, I've got to do something else now.
Yeah, so I went back overseas. So I went traveling again, and then I ended up so I spent some time in Hungary before, ended up back in Hungary. Then after that, ended up in Slovakia, in the mountains, in the High Tatras. So like proper mountains,
Epic.
And yeah, that was cool. So did that. And then basically two things happened. One, I met a girl, classic story.
Yeah, classic.
Classic story, who was British.
Yeah.
At that point, I never thought...
Didn't want to stay in Slovakia.
Yeah, never thought I was coming back to the UK. But then also my grandfather, who I mentioned earlier on.
Really? Generally? So you actually thought that,
that was it.
That's it. I'm just going to be traveling the world. And
my plan was, I had a degree in anthropology, master's in anthropology, which kind of tied in quite nicely.
Yeah.
I was aiming to go overland, sort of work my way down towards Oz and New Zealand and just sort of like keep floating around until something came up.
I know I shouldn't say this because it didn't happen, but that would have been so cool.
I know. And there's a little bit of me every day that looks in the mirror and thinks, like, if I hadn't come back and I just gone, I would now be a cowboy in the Northern Territories of Australia.
Yeah, you probably would be.
Yeah.
In fact, you definitely would be. Yeah. That's what you would be doing right now.
It breaks my heart a little bit. But anyway, I'm also, my grandfather I was talking about earlier on was unwell and basically dying. So I came back to the UK with said girl. She went off to finish her degree. I think she deferred or something. That didn't last. That sort of lasted a year or so, and then that kind of broke. But moved back in at home where my folks were living with my grandfather, and sort of spent the last period of his life sort of looking after him and spending time with him. And he was like one of my heroes, just an amazing guy. Like, in the 40s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, traveled around the world, India, Burma, the Middle East, all kinds of stuff, through the lens of the sort of British Army, but just spoke like a bit of Urdu and Punjabi.
Wow.
As a 80-something-year-old, guy from the Welsh Valleys, just amazing. I grew up on sort of curry and Indian culture, which is quite strange in rural Wales, but anyway, so I moved back with him. And that period is what sort of started the farming. So I'd moved back, looking after him, living at home in a wooden cabin in my parents' garden that was meant to be like a summer house type thing. So I was like cooking on a gas barbecue, living there. So that was cool. And then got a job working with kids, so counselling children in a high school, a place called Dufferin, which is a really rough is a harsh word to use, but it's a pretty, it draws from a load of like community first, like low income areas, and it can be pretty tough school. So I did that for a while, and that was cool, but needed to get my countryside fix, my kind of outdoor fix. My folks live right next to a large estate. I say there's no estate around there. There's one. I say large for the area. So 1,000 acres.
Okay, so this is when the gamekeeping stuff came in.
Yeah, 1,000 acres.
Right, okay.
The family live in a castle. They're awesome people. And basically, I stopped one day a man putting a fence up on the side of the road and was like, "Hey," and started chatting. And he was like, the owner turned out, and he was like, "Do you know anything about pheasants?" And I was like, "Well, I grew up on a lot of shoots, but..." And he's like, "Well, we just sacked our gamekeeper. I don't suppose you want to come and help?
Do you want to become a gamekeeper?"
Yeah, come and help feed the pheasants." And it started off as just like can you get up in the morning, go around and fill the hoppers and feed the pheasants? So I was like, yeah, cool. Okay, I can do that. Quad bike, got my dog, went out, did that.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Nice.
And then that really, really quickly developed into, and can you do this? And can you do that? And can you come on shoot days? And so like, before I know it, I'm wearing like tweed breeks, you know, running shoot days on an estate. And there'd been a smallish shoot, and I think like the first year I was there, I smashed like the 25-year record for like the best season, the best days.
Yeah.
And just loved working outside with animals, getting the best out of everything. And then the estate had sheep and cattle. So the estate had about 800 breeding ewes, and I think 180 to 100 suckler cattle. And there was an awesome guy called David, who is just like, general farm work is the wrong word. Like the man digs graves, builds roads.
Okay, yeah.
They've got like a natural burial ground. You know, he does everything.
Just does things.
Yeah, just an amazing guy. Been there since he was like 15, and he'd be in his 60s now, I think, early 60s. But anyway, so I basically like, you know, annoyed him and sort of followed him around, and just that's how I kind of learned a bit more about like commercial level kind of farming. And then I basically decided I wanted to do some of my own. So there was a little strip in between. So where you drove into the estate from my folks' house, there was like a 4-acre-ish strip of brambles by the side of the road. So I kept looking at it, and I thought, oh, I'm going out. So I found out who owned it. It was belonged to a local butcher who used to use it to keep, when it was a grass field, to keep a few beasts in before they went to slaughter, blah, 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 for his butcher shop. When I knocked on his door, and he was like, well, I don't use it. It's just a load of bramble with no fences. If you want to use it, you're welcome to use it. Won't charge you any rent, but I will come to sell it one day, and then you'll just have to get off. And I said, well, if you do sell it, you know, think of me, ha ha. And then
famous last words.
And then went to, basically was in Hereford Market one day and ended up buying a pig, a large saddleback sow with a litter of 8 piglets, because basically pig prices were on their arse, and the people around me were like, well, we'll buy them, not the piglets on the head, and then just put the sow back in the cull ring. So I was like, no, save the pig, as you do. So I came home with a very large pig and 8 piglets, much to my parents, like, they just by this point,
what have you done?
Yeah, by this point they were starting to get used to things a little bit.
I was gonna say, I love the randomness of this story. I think you're just one of those examples of someone who, just go with life. Opportunities come, see where it goes.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, when a door opens, I'm really bad at not just like, I just can't help myself to step
where does this go?
Be like, let's have a look at where this goes. I think kind of everything generally happens for a reason, and life's got a funny way of sort of guiding you into the stuff you're probably meant to do. And when things don't work out, often it's because it probably wasn't kind of meant to. So I bought the pig, came home, cobbled together some like dodgy fencing, had a pig, reared some piglets, sold some piglets as like weaners, and then like fattened a few. And I was like, this pig thing's all right. So then went and bought more pigs, store pigs, started fattening pigs, putting them in boxes, making sausages. Even got as far as AIing my big pig, which was an amazing, like, so you can imagine like a sort of a long hair, I didn't have dreadlocks then, long hair, bearded man riding around the back of a pig, trying to like insert this tube into her while she was not happy in a muddy field, like on the side of the road, and people driving by thinking, why is there a man doing pig rodeo over there? But I managed to get the pig pregnant, so I have fathered a litter of piglets. That's one of my many claims to fame. So she had those piglets, so I farrowed the pig, which was quite a kind of nerve-wracking experience, and probably more nerve-wracking than it should be, because I think she had 11 or something, or 12. She had more than she could look after. One, and I ended up ball rearing a piglet. So I had a pet piglet, which is brilliant when they're tiny. When they get to be like a quarter of a ton and they want to show how big pigs are, and they want to jump on your lap, less so. So anyway, so had some pigs, and then was like, pigs aren't really my thing. I want some sheep. So went up the road and found an old lady who had some paddocks, and convinced her to let me have some grass. But the only thing she let me have was like a tiny, like half-acre paddock with a trampoline in it that the kids, her grandkids went on. So I went and bought some ewe lambs. I went and bought a pair of ewe lambs off somebody, shedding ewe lambs, and they sort of threw in the runty bottle-reared triplet with it.
Yeah.
So I was now big in the game. I had some pigs and I had 3 sheep. So I put the 3 sheep in this little paddock, and after staring at them repetitively for a few days and thinking, where do I really go from here with 3? Like, I don't like, this isn't really farming sheep. I've just got three sheep. But I ended up getting hold of Tim White, who, again, you might know, the ex-Lana guy. Went and borrowed a chunk of money off the bank, 10 grand. I think, if memory serves me right, I told them it was for a car or for something. It was personal bank loan, because no one's going to lend a business. Yeah, no one's going to give a business loan to a.
Yeah, just don't mention the sheep. No.
So I went to Tim and I bought 100-ish ewes off Tim at various ages. By this point, I'd convinced the lady that she should probably let me have the rest of her paddocks because they were really nice. These things.
Possibly a good idea before, unless the sheep like the trampolining, I suppose. But.
That's it. So she was saying, so did that, bought a ram, had some ewe lambs in there, so bought a couple of chamois rams. So I've kind of in my own farming, I've always farmed the same thing really. So we had about 100 ex-Lana ewes and an ex-Lana shedding ram, and then a couple of chamois ram lambs to go over the ewe lambs. And then the first year I lambed these sheep outside. I had never lambed my own sheep. I'd never lambed sheep outside.
Right.
Didn't really know what I was doing.
Best way to learn.
Luckily, I picked the right sheep. So my dad will probably like testify to the fact that there were definitely days where I was like, I'm not doing this ever again. Like, I am never lambing sheep outside again. This is awful. Like, after I chased one round for like half an hour, with a head hanging out. But we got them lambed, and actually we had a really good lambing. And we'd been doing I spent like this is over a period of a couple of years or so. So I'd been doing bits for other people and on the estate and stuff. And then I got a little collie pup. So one night on pre-loved, after too many beers, I ended up buying a 6 month old collie.
Of course.
Out of a house somewhere in the Forest of Dean. Didn't see the parents, never saw it round sheep. So all the things that I would probably tell somebody not to do. Went and picked it up, took it around my sheep, and it was mad keen. And so we trained that a bit, had some help and this, that, and the other. And going back, when I getting my sheep in, the guy at the estate, David, I was talking about earlier on, he'd lend me his sheepdog. So we sort of we got through it. And anyway, so that worked. So we were farming sheep and a couple of pigs, and then started doing a bit of contracting for other people because you've got a dog, you're half youthful, you make people laugh a little bit, so they kind of have you along. Do you know what I mean? You don't charge too much. So next thing I know, farming sheep, doing a bit of sheep work, also still working in the school, also still gamekeeping, not sleeping a lot.
Oh, you do all that as well? Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's bad, man. There are I probably should admit it, but there were definitely days that I went into the school and then went to sleep on top of my desk in my little office so that people couldn't see underneath the door to see if I was in there. Not cool. And then I'd have I'd work ridiculous hours to have time in lieu to then do shoot days, and it was just a bit crazy.
Wow.
And then basically I went to an ex-Lana ram sale in sort of Exeter way, I think it is. And there was a woman giving a talk there called Catherine Nakliani, who is a sheep consultant.
Okay.
And she had recently been to look at a large new regenerative agriculture project in Hampshire, a place called Kingsclere Estates.
With Mr. May. Okay.
With Mr. May. And so she'd taken on the contract management of the livestock, but she was in Wales and they needed a shepherd.
Right.
And so I met her one day on the side of the M4. Exactly. Bing. It's like light bulb moment.
Yeah.
So I met her on the side of the M4, jumped in the car. We went down to see Kingsclere. And, from someone who's wants to farm sheep and has been messing around with it, a couple of hundred a year or massive flocks of 800, but running 200 ewes here, 200 ewes there. Went down to Kingsclere, went to see the sheep, walked around the corner. And I think they had 1,700 ewes at the time in one mob, mob grazing, daily moves. And I walked around the corner with my little dog and was like, holy shit, that's a lot of sheep. Like, that is literally the most sheep I've ever seen in my life, let alone in one place. So I was like, this is cool. So I started, they didn't have any staff. So immediately I started coming down every week for a couple of days, staying down there, giving them a hand.
Yep.
And within about 3 weeks, I'd quit my job, packed my shit, and moved to Hampshire, into a house with sort of I think at the time it had no carpets, no curtains. It was like they were just like doing the house up, like renovating it. So me and my little dog slept in a sleeping bag on the floor and started sheeping. So that was cool. And then my sheep stayed at home for a minute, and Dad, there's a theme here, my long-suffering father.
He's a good guy. Yeah,
he's a good guy. My parents are very good people. But there he was like checking my sheep and stuff. So I moved down to Hampshire and started doing their sheep. And basically that first year I moved down, I think it was November 2015. So we moved down, we put the taps in December to lamb in May. Sometime after Christmas, the lady I was working for stopped answering her phone.
Okay.
And emails. And nobody could get a hold of her, neither me nor Tim.
Okay.
So we were like, oh, we've got a lot of pregnant sheep that are going to lamb. So we got hold of, between us, I can't remember if it was Tim and myself, we got hold of some students from the RAU.
Okay.
And I was so lucky because that first year it was like, if Carlsberg made students, then it would be. So these guys had come from the northern, they were British, but they'd been over in the Northern Territories of Australia.
Right.
On a massive cattle station. So it was like big numbers of stock, hard graft. It was a couple, and they were just Talia and John, and they were just amazing people. So the three of us were like, we're going to lamb these sheep.
We can do this.
So no one was doing it at the time. I don't even think at the time I was getting paid anymore because this woman just disappeared. It turned out, unfortunately, she'd had some sort of medical issues and had to have a kind of bit of a life break. Unfortunately, I didn't know any of this, so I was just like up shit creek without a paddle. So first year we lambed the ewes, and we kind of went from there. And I was suddenly thrown into the whole mob grazing, daily moves, big numbers, blah blah blah, and just kind of ran with it. And luckily the estate had 2 collies that Tim had bought, which kind of just got given to me. So I was running sort of 3 dogs. And we just kind of went from there, and it was great. It worked really well, and we got through lambing and stuff. And sort of Tim came to me and said, "I got to kind of put this out for contract now because that's how I want to do it. I don't want to employ a shepherd." So you've got 2 options. We got 3 options really. You hope that the person who takes the contract on will take you on. You go somewhere else, or you tender for the contract.
Okay. So
it was like, well, I'll tender for the contract.
Yeah.
Then I tendered for the contracts. The next thing, I'm like doing the sheep at Kingsclere in my own right. My sheep, Tim was amazing. He's an amazing bloke. Like, he found me a bit of ground locally so I could bring my sheep down, and the rest kind of is history there. So we sort of did that for about 7-8 years, something like that. And 15, 16, 17, 18, about sort of 6-7 years probably. And we did that, and we sort of had mules, and we went over to wool shedders eventually, and this, that, and the other. And pretty much Tim sort of left me to it with the sheep. So
that's amazing. Yeah, so I mean, that was really the beginning of, I suppose, the start of your business now. And I should say to listeners, because it's fascinating knowing everything that Tim's done since then. Scroll all the way back to some really early episodes. I think Tim was probably episode 7 or something like that, 7 or 8. Several years back, but Tim is a fantastic guy. But anyway, that regardless. This was the seed of the beginning of your business.
It was, and he's an amazing guy. So I luckily came into Kingsclere when they'd like only had the sheep, a couple of years, and it was all very new, and there was like no infrastructure and this, that, and the other. And they built some corrals and stuff, but it wasn't stock fenced. It wasn't so like. We went through the good times and the bad times. Christmas Day, I had like 3,000 lambs out on Main 339 road between Basingstoke and Newbury. Either side. It was just lots of like difficult stuff, but it was an amazing kind of like proving ground and like learning experience. And I, didn't know anything about arable when I came. And obviously there's a big arable estate and the herbal lays and grass. And, Tim taught me nothing about sheep. but an awful lot about grass, grazing,
Yeah.
arable, regenerative agriculture, soil. Like Tim's an amazing soil farmer. Like, you know, and I think he would probably call himself that, you know, as opposed to an arable farmer or a sheep farmer or a soil farmer. So yeah, so that was awesome. So that was the beginning of my business, really. And then Tim being Tim encouraged me to develop my business. And that went through a period then where I got a little bit ahead of myself, and we took on contracts to manage a couple of the other local estates. That kind of period, we had a whole load of staff, and we probably had we went up to about 8,000 ewes spread across the place, like other people's sheep mostly. So we kind of, I think at most, Kingsclere got up sort of 2.5, 2.7. And I think we had 3,000 odd there at one point. We had a couple of thousand ewes at another, I probably shouldn't mention them, another couple of estates. And it, you know, it went well, but due to a clash of personality and ideas, that kind of period led to almost a mental breakdown.
Wow. Okay.
I think, yeah, it wasn't good. Like staff people. So we sort of had a little look at the business model, pulled back to Kingsclere, and then started doing a lot of thought basically I could do more of my own sheep, and store lambs and tack ewes. Then we started taking on tack sheep, which basically, just in case listeners don't know what it is, it's mostly people in places where like there's no grass in the winter, so like the Welsh Hills or the Romney Marshes, send their sheep away on holiday for the winter. So we were having a lot of sheep up from the Romney Marshes over winter, and down from Wales, and sort of did that. And during that period, my sheep sort of built up as they do. So, you know, 120 I brought down, 200, 300, 400, 600, you know, as they do. And before I knew it, I was running, you know, a decent sized flock on my own. And it got to the point where Tim sort of said, like, why don't we sell my sheep and you can just move your sheep in to Kingsclere? So mine came on to Kingsclere, and that was good. And we kind of it wasn't a long-term thing because the dairy, there's like a mobile dairy there. That was always going to be the thing that grew. So when I first came, there was no dairy. We just had beef, cow, and sheep. And then slowly the dairy developed. So, and then I think we're back up to where we were then. And then we moved next door onto this place, Ewhurst Park, which is now owned by a 37-year-old Malaysian model from London. And then that led to them deciding to rewild it. We got given our marching orders, so we lambed April into May, had 1,200 ewes there with all the lambs, had a hell of a scan, so had a lot of lambs, and had to move them all in June. So that was fun. So loading lorries with ewes with lambs at foot, had to get them somewhere.
Goodness.
Was going to sell them, but then got offered an opportunity. Someone in Shropshire had lost staff. They'd sold some sheep. They had about 4,500 ewes of their own. And basically they were like, you can come and bring your sheep up for the hopefully longer term, but we'll see, you know, summer at least, come and help me with my sheep. So we moved them all up there. I spent the last since June, so 6 months almost, in a caravan in a valley in Shropshire with no phone signal, no internet, lots of sheep. Been very lucky. I've kind of relied on the kindness of strangers. A few people have come out of the woodwork through various things, a couple off the farming forum, one through an advert in the Farmers Weekly, and then other things just through personal connections and conversations. And so that's kind of like where we are now. We've had sheep sort of spread all over the world, it feels like. I think I said to you earlier on, the last 4 months, I've done 12,000 miles in a Vauxhall Astra.
That is mad.
Which is, I keep telling people, it's the equivalent of driving London to Sydney, or just slightly further now, actually.
What do you do during that? So do you listen to music podcasts? What do you actually, or do you just
I'm
think?
not
or
actually technologically capable enough to manage to figure out how to listen to podcasts in my car. So I listen to music, and talk to the dogs.
Nice.
And think and do a lot of thinking. And then speak to people. Like, people are always like, "You're always calling us when you're driving," and I'm like,
"Yeah,
well,
it's a great time." Yeah, I always do that. It's a great time to speak to people, for you anyway, not necessarily for them.
Yeah. I'm always driving, and also it's my only dead time. So so I do a fair bit of that. And generally people know when I'm in Shropshire because they can't get hold of me. It's like I fall into the black hole. So we sort of did that, and then sort of sheep are everywhere, and I'm back in Hampshire. So I had a house in Hampshire the whole time, which was a very expensive postal address. but yeah, that's where I'm back today. So I'm here, and then so yeah, so that's brought us up to now, I suppose. Yeah. So and I'm at a little bit of a crossroads because, as I said, currently I have no ground past the end of March, so I have nowhere to land these sheep. So I've got until then to find some ground. Hence my trip this week across to Essex.
Yeah.
So a chunk of grazing I want to look up there. In all honesty, if I don't find any grazing, I mean, it'd be really nice if it was in and around Hampshire, because I actually quite like living here. If I don't find any grazing, I'll probably sell the sheep. I've sold some, sold a bunch of ewes. And whether I do something kind of very different, possibly go to Australia or New Zealand, that's on the cards.
I love this. I love it. It's like sort of, that's completely down to your mindset of, well, if it happens, it happens, then go do something else.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I'd love this stuff. I'd love, wouldn't be a bad thing. New Zealand, Australia. Also, there is a really exciting, there's a guy doing some really exciting things in Germany, farming, a guy called Wolfgang, farming sheep there. And I've been kind of badgering him over Instagram to be like, can I come have a look? Can I come and have a look? And I know they have issues with staff. So there's Germany's another option, or just stay here and, but I kind of normally, right when you think that you're in the shit, something comes up. Yeah. So, some ground comes up. And then also Rob and Joe, who I was talking to earlier on, I mean, they'd like me to do more work for them. I get offered quite a lot of work from people because people can't get decent staff. So there's always options. So I wouldn't go out of farming. Someone turned around to me at the pub the other day and went, James, you're just gonna have to accept it. You're stuck in farming now. Like, this is what you do. Like, none of this like, oh, I might do something completely different. Like, no, you will do a variation on the theme. You might go somewhere different. You might do something slightly different, but you will be farming, and it will probably be sheep because you've got loads of sheepdogs. So, and that's the issue. Like, I am a shepherd. I have sheepdogs.
That is literally what you do. It's but I mean, with that, I mean, do you have any big future plans or goals or anything, or are you very much just quite happy just to keep on going?
I'll tell you what, like, someone asked me the other day, and what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to get out of life? Like, what do I want to achieve? Yeah. What do I want to be? And I said, do you know what?
Such a hard question.
And I haven't, I've spent so much of my recent few years of life having to deal with a problem that's directly in front of me.
Yeah.
So, not think about what I want to do, but having to think about what I have to do to try and get myself out of this hole, or get this problem, get over this roadblock, whatever. And that's kind of become my life, is reacting to problems and just getting through stuff, the next thing. And it's on this kind of journey to do. And I mean, I'd love to have a family, kids. I'm 38 in March. I've got no partner. I've got no children. I don't know if it doesn't happen anytime soon, whether that's going to happen. So I don't know. I will suck it and see a little bit. Like, I do have a plan. Like, I'd love to own a farm. I'd love to have a farm. Everyone would. It'd be amazing. I'd love to have a secure tenancy somewhere. It's difficult because the tenancies you do see are often small acreages in very established farming areas, where you'd go up and you'd suddenly be like farming 150 acres.
Yeah.
Not able to make a living. So
it's true though, isn't it?
Yeah. Paying an extortionately high rent. Yeah. So you're like, might be better off if I could get like a secure block of grazing somewhere and, just kind of carry on. And I don't know, develop the consultancy thing a bit. But I just like adventures. It wouldn't take an awful lot if I did sell a sheep for someone to be like, do you want to go to the Northern Territories, Australia, and ranch cattle? Do you want to ranch cattle? Do you want to go to like Wyoming and become a cowboy? Then I'd be like, and the only thing that really keeps me here is obviously the sheep, but the dogs. So I've got 14 dogs.
14?
Unless you rent me a house, I've only got 6. That's my letting agent. I'm assuming my letting agent probably isn't listening to this. If they are,
probably
they
not.
They don't live here. My name is not James. I do not have 14 dogs. But I've got 14 dogs. So that's kind of a fairly big tie. I say about not having kids. That kind of means that I can't just bugger off.
Yeah, that is a bit of a tie. Where are we going next? Let's go back to sort of the whole new entrant thing. In inverted commas. Then you come across as a pretty open guy, pretty friendly guy. How would you say? And I'm guessing you get on pretty well with most people you meet. How welcoming would you say the industry is generally?
Well, it's interesting you say that about me getting on well with most people I meet. Some and some. Like, unfortunately, I am a pretty open guy, and that does create its own problems. So, I am quite friendly, and I do get on with most people, but I have a habit of sort of how I see it anyway, being honest, speaking the truth, which doesn't always go down very well. Funny enough, it tends to go down better with the farming community than it does with the rest of the new entrants.
Yeah, I can see that, actually.
Yeah, people appreciate kind of straightness. And so, if I'm totally honest, the biggest difficulties I've had have been access to ground and security of tenure. So, and most of that hasn't, we live in the land of the landowner here, not the farmer. So back home in Wales, farms are owned by farmers. You work for farmers. Down here, you work for merchant bankers from London who own a large estate. You work for a model who owns a large estate, whatever. Tim May being one of the unusual ones, but Tim's a farmer. And I think that's probably what we've got on. So being totally honest, people keep talking about how hard it is to get into farming, especially sheep farming. And I'm going to kind of call bollocks on that one. It's not hard to get into farming at all. It's hard to be good at it, and it's hard to progress. Like, the routes of progression is the biggest difficulty. But I mean, there are loads of like keen young people getting into it and doing amazing things, building a successful business that means that you can, like, you're making money and you're doing well. That's quite hard. And routes of progression to build your own business, that again is quite hard. And I've always found people really welcoming. I mean, I'm 6'3", 38-year-old man with a beard and dreadlocks, who's quite outspoken. Like, I'm not like, the average farmer. Some of the people I meet, I went out to take these sheep up to Lincolnshire to keep to the first place, and the guy's got to be late 60s, 70, something like that. I might have just done him a disservice, but I'm pretty sure. And him and his wife, I appeared in a Vauxhall Astra estate. Fell out of my Vauxhall Astra estate with a load of dogs, dreadlocks, blah, blah. And the guy did not even blink. He just was like, cool, follow me and I'll come and show you that. And we just looked at grass, turnips, cover crops. And, I went up to see this other chap with the other, funny enough, also in Lincolnshire, a younger chap in his 20s, farming, traditional farming family. We sat on the patio, and mum brought out homemade biscuits and a cup of tea.
Nice.
And again, they did not like Vauxhall Astra estate pulls up and a head full of dreadlocks sticks out the window. And, hello, and didn't bat an eyelid. And I've actually found, like, a lot of the time with a lot of new entrants, they've got quite a chip on their shoulder about established farmers. And actually, most people were like, I know sheep, like, I'm a sheep geek, I'm a sheep obsessive, and I know quite a lot about sheep, and I know dogs, and I like dogs. And, like, most of the time you're a 5-minute chat. Of course, you get arseholes and everything who'll just judge you and not like you. But I found the majority of people super friendly, super, like, keen to give you a hand, help you. I've been lent kit, given advice, like, just helped in so many ways by people that have, like, genuinely wanted to see me get on. And it's all, I think, everyone, like, appreciates an attitude of, like, trying to make your way, trying to make it work, grafting. The stumbling block comes when, trying to progress and build a larger business. Like, that's what's harder. But there are, like, I mean, I could give you 5-10 different really cool operations who currently have no staff and are screaming out for staff. And the kind of people that come to be, apply for it are, like, pretty embarrassing. Like, and there are definitely people out there who are better but don't apply. And I think there's a lot of people, like I see on Instagram, there's a lot of people who would rather farm a couple of hundred sheep of their own at a loss and not get anywhere than go to work with somebody or for somebody who's got 2,000-3,000 ewes, a great operation where they could grow and develop, and there probably would be room to get skin in the game. Rob and Joe was talking about earlier on, they've got an amazing operation. They got 2,000 odd Romney ewes, like, importing genetics from New Zealand, really cool stuff, loads of recording, like, really interesting.
Yeah, but issues with staff.
Massive issues with staff. And the issues with staff, like, they're the sort of people, they've got dairy, they've got this, they've got arable, they're the sort of people that if you went and worked for them as a shepherd, you'd be able to get skin in the game. They'd happily probably involve you in a profit share and stuff like that. And the other thing I think as well is that the land of the sheep has always traditionally been like Wales, the Midlands, the north of England, and it's moving. Like, if you want to develop yourself with sheep now, you've got to go east, really, I would think. Eastern counties, all those arable farms, like the whole thing with elms changing has maybe put a slight kibosh on that, but there are cover crops. There are shitloads of cover crops in the eastern counties. That's the way to do it. Don't worry for a minute about trying to get a tenancy somewhere in the country. Like, you've got cover crops outside your window. You can get electric fencing. You can take, you can build your business, build your skills, build your reputation. That as a new entrant, you need to do. You need to take opportunities anywhere to work with people, work for people, build your skills, build your knowledge. Even just build up capital. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when I started, I was winding electric fence wire around a stick to pick it up and to put it out. I was like, it was rough, like really rough. I didn't have enough electric fencing to fence all of fields. So I was having to do it. It was just shit. And now we own a couple of quad bikes, winder, wrapper trailer, about 1 million miles of electric fencing. We could probably fence to the moon. And it's just come through doing work for other people.
Exactly. Time.
Time, building up capital, building up things. And that's I actually think, as a new entrant, like, if you do that and you do it the right way, like, there's always opportunities. I drive around and see opportunities everywhere. But yeah, so I think actually, it's a pretty welcoming place, agriculture. Like, it's like, there are a lot of stumbling blocks. There are a lot of like roadblocks. There are a lot of things that are hard, but you sometimes just need to like, just suck it up and just prove people wrong. And I think, as a new entrant, as a woman in ag, as a whatever, you can let yourself get defeated by it and get really despondent and really down.
But just focus on what you can do.
Yeah. Focus on what you can do, the stuff you can change, the stuff you can develop. And then, it will usually fall into place. Like, eventually it will fall into place,
Yeah.
And we can kind of move on to something else. But I was going to say, every new entrant that I speak to, if I could tell them to read one thing, it would be, there is a Nuffield scholarship by a guy called Michael Blanche called The Farming Ladder. If you Google Michael Blanche Nuffield Scholarship Farming Ladder, it will come up. Any new entrant should read it. And if you don't read the whole thing, read the introduction, where he talks about being a new entrant in farming. And his Nuffield Scholarship is about what happens after entry. How, after you get into the industry by going and buy 20 sheep or whatever, taking a job somewhere, how you manage to like build a business, and a sustainable business, and how you manage to get ahead, and how hard it is, and the challenges. And he talks about the fact that if you want to get ahead, you've got to be top 5%.
Yep.
And interestingly, he travels around the world, and something he notices, I think, is that in Britain, we're very like, it's not fair, we can't get ahead. And actually, a lot of the rest of the world, they don't expect it to be fair. So they just get on and crack on. But having said that, as a caveat, you go to New Zealand, you've got share milking models. You've got a lot of countries, you've got places where you can go in there with a dog and a stick into someone else's business, and there's a direct route for progression to build your business, your own business within it. We don't have that in the UK. We've had like flirtatious kind of share farming models, but all of them are because of our taxation system. Why does a big estate go in a share farming model with someone like me? Because if they're the active farmer, they get the subs. If on paper they're in a share farming deal with me, they're the active farmer, aren't they? So they get the subs. So they're a little bit, they looked initially when they first started coming out like they were going to be a great kind of deal, but they're not. And that is something in British farming we need to address. We need to make it not any easier for people to get in, but for those people who've got in, we need to make it, there needs to be some form of clear route of progression, because otherwise people like myself and lots of the other people, we're going to go overseas. We're going to go overseas or into other industries. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's the kind of worry in British ag, is we're going to become a very large park for the greater public good, with lots of very inefficient traditional farming practices, and a lot of the like very young, hopeful people want to get in because it seems nice to have 12 herdwicks up a hill in Cumbria. And actually the people who would advance and take on the industry to be a sustainable, profitable, kind of successful long-term thing will just leave the industry or go overseas. So
wow. So with that in mind, we are going to start to wrap this up. But I've loved listening to you. We always finish the show with the same two questions, which we're going to do now. The first is, James, if you have a message for the public, any message, what would it be?
I think to just, we're a tiny little island, and we're a very rural farming island, despite kind of, what most people kind of see out the window. And I think we have amazing produce. Like, we have truly amazing produce here, sort of produced by pretty amazing, passionate people. And I don't think like everyone should have to buy British. Like, I'm not saying that, it's a free choice, but I think they should at least try it, consider it, try it, because you go and buy and eat seasonal local produce. Just try it once or twice, you know what I mean? And you will generally always come to the same thing. It's good. It's really good. Seasonal lamb is really good, and British beef is really good, and all the vegetables we have and the fruit and our ciders and our beers and we make some really good food. Obviously, the problem is a lot of people, there's economic barriers to that. But I think if possible, eat kind of locally, eat seasonally, and that's a good way. And just also kind of realize that farmers aren't bad people. Like, most farmers just want to kind of like do their thing, produce food, and indulge their kind of passions, which is usually doing their thing and producing food. And actually, go and talk to people, go and talk to a farmer. If you're not sure, if you think maybe we're like evil, bad people, destroying the world, just go and talk to somebody. Like, most of them are pretty approachable. You can go to a livestock market. You don't have to be a farmer. You can go to an ag show. You can go and like knock on the door of your local farm. If you're not sure about these people and you think they might be slightly funny, dodgy people, go and say hello. Like, we don't bite. We're quite nice, and listen to stuff like these podcasts, and just like educate yourself a little bit.
And finally, your message to farmers:
don't give up. Don't give up. Like, it might not always be the easiest, and you might not always get to where you think you were going to get, but the journey and the kind of like adventure along the way, it kind of makes up for that. It's an amazing industry, really. Like, when you stay, we're very good at being depressed and down and negative about it. It's kind of what we do as British people. We're so bloody miserable sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And actually, like, look outside the window. We live in some of the most beautiful parts of the world. Most farmers are blessed with what they get. Like, you go and live in like, a housing estate in the middle of like a lot of our major cities and towns. You know what I mean? And like, you go and then live like where most farmers live and spend their day. We are so lucky and so blessed. I think cheer up a little bit.
Yeah.
Enjoy what you're doing. And that kind of carries through then and infects other people. Do you know what I mean? Be positive, enjoy, be kind of, and just strive to be the best you can be. Someone once said to me, to do less than all you could would be a waste. And I think there's that, it's like, get up in the morning, put your best foot forward, have a good go, and enjoy the adventure.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a great point to end it on, I think. Wow, James, thank you so much for coming on. It's it's been a pleasure meeting you, and also, just good luck, I suppose, for the next stage. But even if you do end up selling your sheep, which I really hope you don't, that could be just a great adventure, wherever you're going to next.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, life's always an adventure, isn't it? So on to the next one. But hopefully, I think I have a funny feeling that it'll work out. It usually does in the end.
Yeah, well, that's what I genuinely love about your attitude. That's one thing I've taken personally from this conversation, for sure, is just that brilliant attitude you have, that it will be what it will be. That's certainly how it's coming across.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you it's, again, full of the quotes, but someone said you can't do a lot about what happens to you, but you can do plenty about how you deal with it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that in farming, I think that's probably a salient message in farming as well for farmers. We can't do anything. We had a drought. We lambed sheep outside during the beast from the east, like stuff like that. You can't affect. You know what I mean? Lamb prices going down, whatever. But you can affect how you deal with it, your mindset, and how you kind of project that to the people around you and stuff. So I think that's a big thing.
That's great. If anyone isn't already, I'm sure lots of them will be, but how do they follow you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at really catchily. I think it's at JJ Livestock UK.
UK, I think it is, yeah.
And I basically only really use Instagram. I'm not trying to save the world or educate people or anything else like that. I just put videos of my dogs chasing sheep with music behind them. And that's kind of my thing. My USP is silly videos of my dogs, and like, my dogs are like my whole kind of world, really. And so the videos of dogs and sheep to music is kind of like what I'm giving the world through social media.
Yeah.
So
your many dogs.
Yes. Unless you're my letting agent, it's only 6, definitely.
Of course. Yeah. Brilliant. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. You can also support us on Patreon. That's by visiting patreon.com/meet the farmers. Next time, I will be speaking to Cambridgeshire farmer Toby Simpson for International Leadership Week. And on our sister podcast, Rural Business Focus, this week, we're talking about virtual assistants. I'm not sure how many of you that will impact, but go over and listen to that if that's of interest. I hope you can join me next time. I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.